Today is Sunday, September 23rd, and this is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. I'm Adam Kaufman, and episode 281 featuring Mass Live's Tom Westerholm is brought to you by Calm Balm. Right now, my listeners, for a limited time, can get a Calm Balm at a huge discount by going to their website, buybombshelpmoms.com, and clicking on the Indiegogo page. Today's show also brought to you by Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barber shop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds of thousands of people who visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark, located at 113 Salem Street. All right, I'm back with you. Thanks to Evan Valenti for filling in for me last week. Did a great show with Jared Weiss. If there's anything you want to know about the Jabari Bird situation, I encourage you to go back, listen to it. Tremendous detail that you won't find anywhere else, as well as a little bit of rumor starting. That's right, the Celtics Beat podcast got a whole lot of national attention. Jared saying that there's some mutual interest between the C's and free agent veteran Jamal Crawford, if in fact the Celtics wind up with a roster spot. We'll get to some of that a little bit later on with Tom Westerholm, but hey, we're excited, right? It's time. We're ready to go. Media day, training camp, preseason games, all of it. It is coming between now and the next show that you will hear a week from today. So this is the time after it was a long summer. It was a long summer with, quite frankly, not a whole lot going on as it related to the Celtics because they didn't have to do much. There were tons of rumors. We all know that, and we all know, will LeBron wind up with Boston? Will Kawhi Leonard get traded to the Celtics? On down the list. But the most important thing in deciding to run it back, as Danny Ainge has, is that everybody is healthy. Gordon Hayward, healthy. KYRIE IRVING, healthy. Even Daniel Tice. Yeah, that's probably the only time you'll hear his name on this show today, but he is healthy as well. So there's reason to be excited about this team. Preseason play, it's right around the corner. We're going to dive right into all of it very, very quickly with the regular season coming up in just under a month, all right? It's been a little while, and I include last year in that, saying that, we didn't quite know. Expectations were high, but we didn't totally know, even when everyone was healthy going into last year, what to expect from this Celtics team. But now that we know, now that we saw what this team can do last year without two All-Stars, playing minutes away from reaching the NBA Finals and the Warriors, and now that there's so much development, younger guys have taken the next step, Jaylen Brown, certainly Jason Tatum, and that you do get those All-Stars back, and Al Horford does a little bit of everything, and Marcus Smart's back, and no contractual concerns. Brad Stevens managing egos, managing the roster, managing rotations. This is the time. There's no more debate. This team is good. Championship contender level good. As in, if they don't wind up playing in the NBA Finals in June, this season, in all likelihood, should be considered a disappointment. So what are we keeping an eye on when it comes to training camp? What are we watching for in the weeks ahead before the regular season begins? We've got an expert. We always do. That's how this show works. Subscribe to Celtics Beat on iTunes. Leave us a comment. Leave us a rating. You can check out shows on the CLNS YouTube page as well and get all the sound, be it Brad Stevens, Wick Grossbeck at the golf tournament, and anything else that you hope to find leading up to the season. Media avails, all of it, which are right around the corner. But without further ado, let's bring in Tom Westerholm, covers the Celtics for Mass Live. And Tom, finally, it's time. Media day is Monday, first training camp practice Tuesday, then the first of 4 preseason games is Friday in Charlotte. So I hope you got plenty of rest over the summer, because time to get back to the grind, big guy.
Yeah, I mean, after the summer previously, you were expecting a little bit less rest in the summer. So actually, this summer was pretty good. Got to relax a little bit and sort of ramp up for the kind of crazy year that's coming.
All right, well, let's cut to the chase here. We can circle back to camp, but when the exhibition games begin, it's 2 against the Hornets, 2 against the Cavaliers, all over the course of 9 nights, so we'll all be pretty busy during that stretch. How are you expecting Brad Stevens to handle those games? For instance, will KYRIE IRVING and Gordon Hayward play every single game since, of course, one, it's a shorter preseason that came into play last year, and also there's just so little time to get these guys acclimated to playing together all over again?
There is. I would be surprised if they played the last one. I think generally that's kind of a chance for, maybe some of the guys who signed training camp deals or whatever to get some minutes and either, show themselves for future contracts down the road or whatever it might be, just to kind of have a little bit of a bigger stage. I would be surprised if they played those nights. But I do think that there will be some significant time, for these guys. I mean, Hayward hasn't played in a year. Like, he needs to get himself back into, like, full game playing shape. And, KYRIE hasn't played since March. So, yeah, I mean, getting some real NBA action under their, behind them would be really big. And I think, some of these guys, I do think that as the season goes on, they're going to be able to play themselves into shape a little bit, and they're going to have a chance to, they don't necessarily need wins right at the start of the season to establish themselves. Like, they can kind of coalesce over the first 2 months and be just fine. So I wouldn't say they necessarily need everybody to be at 100%, just perfect clicking, perfect organization, everything. But I do think that it will benefit, some of the stars to get some real run against, players who are actually competing.
That is one thing that's true about the early season stretch. I remember I was talking to Sean Grandy on the show, I don't know, few weeks ago, whatever it was, and he was outlining that I think out of the first 13, 14 games of the year, 9 are on the road, and so if they begin, bad travel for you, but if they begin, say 9-4, 9-5, whatever that mark is, but you're so road heavy to start, obviously that's a situation where, I mean, you can't complain. That's a good positive start, even though some people may react as though the sky's falling.
100%. And, the other thing about it is just, again, as they coalesce, as everybody gets used to playing with Gordon Hayward will basically be the first time, they'll get better and better. So, yeah, I mean, I think, a slightly slower start is certainly not the end of the world. And, I really don't expect it. I mean, there are a lot of away games, but, some of those games are, slightly weaker teams and, winnable ones. So I don't think they're going to go, 7-6 in their first 13 or anything. But if they did, it really would not be the end of the world, because this is a team that is not, built for November wins. It's a team that's hoping to be playing, into June. So I think that as they progress, as they come together a little bit, they will obviously get a lot better. And I think that, at the end of the season, we may start to see, a team that really is ready to do some postseason damage.
Do you think Brad's already kind of worked out the rotations in his head at this point? I mean, to me, he's sort of like that gif we always see on Twitter of Zach Galifianakis in Hangover when he's running the numbers of the blackjack table.
Yeah, no, I think, he's talked a little bit about that. I do think that he is, cognizant of the challenges that he has coming up here, because, he's going to, not only is he going to have to try to, build really good lineups that can beat other teams, like with the second unit, with the third rotation, whatever it might be. He's also got to keep everybody happy. I mean, this is a team that is full of players who could start on other teams. And, I'm not even just talking about, the Jalen, Jason Tatum, like those guys. You go down the bench, it's like you want Marcus Morris to be able to contribute, assuming that he sticks with the team. And, because he's a very productive player. He's very useful against certain matchups, and you don't want him to be upset with his lack of playing time. You want Terry Rozier to continue to develop. You don't want him to, sort of fall off of this growth curve that he's been on, because he's been really good over the last couple of years. So that's going to be really complicated. I mean, Brad is much smarter than us.
Than most people, I think.
I think that's accurate. So, I think that he will have, he'll have a plan, and I assume that he will be talking about that and sort of outlining it with his players. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be definitely sort of a complicated situation for him to sort of unravel.
So you wrote an article recently, a dozen storylines to watch during camp. It's part of the reason why you're here. All these other bums that are just, saving every priceless minute they've got before camp kicks off or tips off. You're already thinking ahead. And of course, I say that lovingly about the other guys, many of whom are often on the show. But the top one, we already hit on it a little bit, is obviously Hayward's health. He spoke to the media recently. This is what he had to say about his feelings.
I'm basically 100%. There's certain things that I think are going to take time, even if I was 100% healthy, not 100% as far as basketball-wise, just because I haven't played in a year. So trying to figure those things out. The last step for me is, as far as from a physical standpoint, is like the little explosion, that little last juice bounce that you get. And so that's going to take maybe the longest time, but for the most part, I feel very good.
So, of course, I say his feelings in part because he's feeling better physically, and, of course, the whole daddy's always happy thing. But great. So how Tom, does all of that translate to the court, everything that he just talked about? And how does adding an all-star who hasn't played in a year impact team chemistry, you think?
Well, that's going to be one of the most interesting questions, at least at the start of the season. I think so. A couple of things about that. I think that Hayward is one of the rare stars who is not only built to fit in nicely into a system, but also I think he's mentally ready to fit into a system. Everybody knows kind of what this team did last year and how good the young players are. Everybody knows how good KYRIE IRVING is and that Al Horford is sort of the staple of the team at this point. And I think Hayward fits perfectly into that. I think that he's the kind of player who isn't necessarily going to demand that he gets 27 points a game, on however many shots. Like, I think if he goes out and he has 19, 8, and 9 or something like that, like, he's going to have a really good night. And he will sort of appreciate that. And you'll be able to go to him at the end of a game if you need to. You'll be able to, just get, 10 points in however many minutes stretch in the third quarter or whatever it might be. He's capable of doing all those things, and that's part of what makes him so valuable to this team. As far as his health, we just kind of have to wait and see. I think the biggest thing to me is going to be how confident he is and how quickly and how long it takes him to really regain all of his confidence, because, that's a really traumatic injury, and I think anybody would excuse him for being a little nervous anytime that he cut back door and went up for a lob, going forward or whatever it might be, or anytime that he, crosses over or, kind of has to test that ankle. And he says that he's been fine. And if that's the case, then that's, fantastic. But I do think that anybody could kind of see why he would be a little bit hesitant, maybe at the start of the year. And I think that'll go away, as he continues to progress, if it even is there at the start. But that'll be, I think, the thing to watch is just how confident is he testing that ankle and really kind of showing his explosiveness.
So I don't know or recall where you stood on Gordon Hayward throughout last year after he suffered that injury, but knowing all that we know now and the fact that he's only just started playing 5-on-5 in the last couple of weeks, does it sort of amaze you thinking back that we spent, and it's the royal we, that we spent so much time last season debating whether or not he'd be able to come back and make an impact even before the postseason?
Yeah, I ended up being both right and wrong because I thought
Didn't we all?
Right. Well, I thought that he wouldn't come back, so I was right about that. But I thought that the reason he wouldn't come back is because the Celtics didn't have a chance to go to the finals, and then actually they had a great chance to go to the finals. So, it's really funny to look back on. The man shattered his ankle. Like, that thing was so bad. It was kind of unreasonable to expect him to come back. But again, all the rationale was there to consider it. They went about as long as they could have to give him a chance to come back. But yeah, it would have been pretty tough to come back for the postseason.
Now, as you said, he shattered his ankle and it was gruesome. To this day, he said he hasn't watched the clip. Plenty of people won't watch the clip. I don't get queasy over it, but it is kind of nuts, I think, how the narrative just took off of, like, people were eulogizing. It was like, you would think he died. He's, career-ending injury. Like, in the big picture, the injury that he suffered is not one that everyday people do not suffer. It doesn't happen every day, but it happens to regular people. It sucks. It's a setback. He missed a year, but I think we should all recognize, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about how perfectly fit he is for this system, but also how talented he is as a player, that, he should be able to come back and in time, once he gets that confidence and gets comfortable again and gets his conditioning up and all the things that you have to do when you miss a year of basketball, he should be the same old Gordon Hayward. I don't think we should be looking at him as though he's trying to recover from, I don't know, even a torn ACL is obviously much more significant than what it is that he experienced. At least in my view it is. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I think you're right. I think Paul George is the really good example here, where a guy had a gruesome broken bone type of injury and then was able to, come back and be an all-star and be like a max level guy. Obviously you can't know how a guy is going to react to, or how just an injury is going to manifest itself on a player. So it is possible still, but I think that it could affect him. But I think you're right. It's a traumatic injury. It hurt him. Obviously, you're glad that he got through all the rehab, because that's tough for anybody to go through. But also you kind of think this is something that he can recover from. I think, as sort of a side note, I think the scariest injury that happened to the Celtics last year was Jalen's concussion when he dunked and he came down so hard. And you just genuinely were, for a minute there, truly kind of afraid for him. this could be something really serious. And then obviously we were all very happy that he got up and walked it off. But I mean, to me, that's almost scarier. I mean, the Hayward thing, it's like he's going to recover, he's going to be okay, and he'll get back on the basketball court. So you definitely hope that he, again, kind of feels confident and feels good going forward. But it does kind of seem like the type of injury that somebody comes back from and sort of puts in their rearview mirror and is able to go back out there and just get back, to where they were before.
No, you're right. On that Jalen injury, I remember tweeting out at the time when it happened, because like most other people, I'm sitting there and I'm watching that game, and I got a lot of flack because it's Twitter and you just get a lot of flack. But in the big picture, it was probably a mixed bag. I remember saying that and feeling that looked just so much worse than the Hayward injury. As ugly as the broken leg was, and seeing your foot pointed in a direction it's not supposed to go, the immediate reaction, obviously, of Jalen hitting the floor and dazed and foggy, and the way they were trying to get him up, and just the look on his face, the eyes rolling back. I mean, that was, as you said, incredibly frightening. The fact that he was able to return at all last postseason, let alone come back and do what he was able to do, is remarkable. Yeah, I mean, it's you just genuinely, feel like real relief the second that he stands up after something like that, because that's, that's completely different. I mean, Hayward, landed on his leg, like Jalen just kind of landing on his neck like that is just horrifying. And I mean, it's actually something that I tweeted about the other day, because I went back and watched some Jalen footage, and when he goes up for dunks, he dunks so hard sometimes that he throws himself off balance in midair. And I was just kind of like, I really hope that he just kind of dials it back just 10% this year, because you don't want him to land like that again. So. Yeah. Well, so injury. I mean, we saw that Irving clip online, dominant in his pickup action in Miami, the usual finesse with the ball. Are there any lingering concerns for you over that knee, or were those kind of wiped away, even just seeing a short clip like that? It's funny because, you hear everybody talking about he's had all these knee problems to this point, and he certainly has had several procedures, but they all seem to have stemmed from the same thing. So, I'm not a doctor, but I personally am not that worried about it, just because he broke his knee in 2015, and every problem since has stemmed from that, and all the problems have been somewhat predictable, because it's at some point he was going to need to get the hardware removed, and then, the bacteria thing was scary, obviously, but, it seems to have resolved itself, and it seems to me, again, very much not a doctor, that now all of the knee problems, that all of the at least foreseeable, consequences of that procedure have been remedied. So, I don't know, but to me, I think that you can probably expect that knee to be pretty good this year. And, hopefully they the tension wire that was causing him all the discomfort, kind of as the season went along last year is gone now. And, that was supposedly going to be fixed by the time the playoffs rolled around. The Celtics were really optimistic that he was going to come back before the bacteria infection. So I think he's going to be really good. I think I don't know, he's had other injuries in the past, but I think that's been overblown a little bit, just because it all, again, stemmed from the same one. And now, that should all be resolved. I'm a little uncomfortable with that one, because I don't know anything, but that's just my impression from, reading all of the reports and everything, is that when everything is fixed with that knee, then hopefully, he's able to just kind of stay on the court. I don't know anything either. I just fake it. It's a lot more fun that way. Just, play a doctor on a podcast, I guess. Right. All of the pressure, none of the money, and none of the responsibility either. Right, yeah, that's true. We'll get right back to Tom. Want to tell you though, today's show is brought to you by Calm Balm, the newest innovation in relaxation. Do you suffer from chronic pain and/or anxiety? Do you want to take your R&R to the next level? Well, try out a Calm Balm today. How's it different from other bath bombs? Well, first, it's made with a patented cannabis oil, which allows the skin to better absorb the CBS. It offers maximum relief to people with chronic pain and anxiety. The high-quality CBD opens up your pores for maximum absorption. They're 100% vegan, organic, cruelty-free bath bombs made right in Boston. Another good thing about Calm Bombs, $5 of your purchase goes directly to families in need. Calm Balm is starting starting a revolution in relief. Its revolutionary formula ensures the CBD is fully absorbed and every box sold helps struggling moms by donating $5 to charity. Calm Balm is now searching for the crowdfunding partners. The donation's inexpensive and rewards are long-lasting. And now, for a limited time, my listeners can get Calm Balms at a huge discount by going to buybombshelpmoms.com and clicking on the Indiegogo page. All right, let's get back to Tom. Obviously, I have to hit on this, although admittedly I'm a little tired of this story already, but a new wrinkle. Jimmy Butler has requested, borderline demanded, a trade out of Minnesota. He says, and really the Timberwolves don't have to give a crap what he says, but he wants to go to either the Clippers, the Knicks, or the Nets, and we'll see how this thing plays out. But the natural tie-in, especially with all the noise that we've been talking about for weeks or months, is do Kyrie Irving and Jimmy Butler actually want to play together? I remember on a show not too long ago, I had Alex Kennedy on from Hoops Hype. He told me that much of that was coming from Butler's camp, as he understood it, and not Irving's, that Irving's actually pretty happy in Boston. But I'll ask you, if in fact Butler winds up with one of those New York teams, be it now or in free agency a year from now, does this new situation impact Kyrie Irving?
So my impression is the same as Alex's, that a lot of this is coming more from that side of things. But it's hard to say with Kyrie. He's kind of an enigmatic dude in the first place. He kind of marches to the beat of his own drum, and that's just kind of the way that he's always been. I will say I think that the Celtics probably shouldn't worry about this yet, just because they have an entire season in which they are expected to be a real contender, in which they're expected to be just, one of the best teams in the NBA, and Kyrie gets to be in just the perfect situation where he has teammates who can, lift him up, but also he gets to be the top dog, the guy on this team. He gets to be the guy on a potential championship contender. So, to me, it's sure, you can start to trace the timeline if you want to, and I don't think it's completely unreasonable to do so. Yes, okay, Jimmy Butler, if he goes to New York and, the Knicks have Butler and Porzingis comes back and he looks good, then there's a fit there. But I don't think that it's it's panic time by any stretch of the imagination. I think that the Celtics have plenty of time to show Kyrie, look, this is the perfect situation for you. Perfect basketball situation. You'll get paid in the summer. All of your interests are, achievable in Boston. You get to be part of a legendary franchise. To me, all of that stuff is just so attractive.
Well, the other thing, too, Tom, and I feel like nobody has really acknowledged this, is don't you remember when he first came to Boston and you had that introductory press conference with he and Gordon Hayward, and he was talking about, and there were reports as well, about how much he wanted to play with Hayward and how he tried to recruit him to Cleveland before LeBron ultimately came back. And unless this is that meme that we always see modified online where it's Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward walking down the street and then the guy turns his head back and he's looking at Jimmy Butler walking by, Jimmy Butler's the other girl here. Unless that's the situation, then I would think, especially in a championship contending situation, even though we know Irving wanted out of that when with LeBron, but this is a very different one, he would be pretty content being with Gordon Hayward, a guy that he wanted to play with, especially now that he actually gets to do it, unlike last year.
Right, and I think, definitely the impression is that he's very excited to get a chance to play with Gordon. And like you said, he has himself said he wanted to play with him from the jump. And that's kind of where it comes back to a lot of this maybe coming from Jimmy Butler, because, or just from his camp, because it really does make, even if the Knicks assembled Butler and Kyrie and Porzingis, that team, it's a very good team. Don't get me wrong. And I think they put themselves right in the class of, the Sixers and maybe maybe the Kyrie-less Celtics. Maybe they're right there. But the Celtics with Kyrie look like a team that could truly challenge Golden State. I don't think that Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, and Kristaps Porzingis are challenging Golden State.
I think people are making, I was tweeting about this, I think people are making way too big a deal out of the whole Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving want to play together angle, as obviously we've talked a little bit about. But I do think the one thing that I feel like we really don't know with Kyrie Irving, the only thing that would make me or should make anyone else nervous as a Celtic fan about whether he stays beyond this coming season, is we don't know how important winning is to Kyrie. He's won a championship. He's been there. He's done that. Is it something that is the top priority for him, even still at this stage of his career, and that's the environment he wants to be in? Or is it more about fit and the guys that he's with? You know, we don't know if New York and being closer to home is more important to him than, say, being with a contender.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely wonder about that. The thing I will say about Kyrie, obviously, you know, he left Cleveland, and I think, you know, you could make the case that, you know, Cleveland was obviously the absolute favorite to go to the finals from the East, and he left like a winning situation with LeBron. But, you know, we saw in the playoffs that the Celtics had a real chance to take down LeBron, even without Kyrie. So presumably, you know, they would have had a chance with him. And, you know, I think that there's a real chance that he saw the writing on the wall the same way everybody else did with LeBron. So, you know, he wanted to leave there. So, the thing about Kyrie is that he is really, really competitive. If you know, post game, whatever, like, you know, after a loss, you can just kind of tell that, you know, he is a very competitive guy. And,
I don't know, man.
You know,
Uncle Drew gave up the shot at the end.
True. But I think, you know, like, you'll see it in a game too. It's like he'll get a basket on somebody at the start of the game. And I think, you know, other people have talked about this too, but he'll get a bucket to start the game just to show a guy, like, I can do this whenever I want. And then he'll start passing because, you know, he's going to get everybody else involved. And he just likes to have that edge over people at the start of the game that, like, well, you can't stop me. And, you know, I think that speaks to kind of that competitive nature. So, you know, maybe going home is important to him. You know, maybe it is. I don't know. But I do know that he's a competitive guy. And I think that, you know, will certainly, at least to a certain extent, play in the Celtics' favor just because, you know, he wants to win, and this team's going to win a whole lot this year.
I do know that to a certain degree I feel badly for you and your other media brethren who are in the locker room every single day, because this is a story that I would love to just go away, and the season hasn't even started yet, and it's going to be a constant talking point.
Well, I will say the nice thing is going to be there's going to be media day. There is going to be a lot of people who aren't always around the team who are going to ask these questions, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable. And then we're going to get into the day-to-day stuff with the beat, and it's going to be a whole lot easier because none of us want to ask him about that. I don't think anybody's going to. You know, he actually gave us the permission structure at an interview earlier this year to say, you know, he's like, yeah, just one question a day about my free agency. And we were like, dude, we don't want one question a day about your free agency. That's a lot of questions about your free agency. But, yeah, no, I mean, it'll go away. I mean, September storylines have a way of resolving themselves when October rolls around.
Something else that you had in your preview of training camp and things to watch. What kind of jumps do you expect to see from Jalen and in year 3 for him, from Jason Tatum as a sophomore? Because in recent past, we've been able to get kind of a sneak peek during Summer League of what guys look like and what they've been working on. That wasn't the case for those two this year for obvious reasons. So what are you thinking? You can start with Jalen, who recently even worked out with Tracy McGrady. What kind of jump do you think he makes in year 3 after such a big year 1 to year 2 jump, given that there's so much health now, presumably on the wing, and the responsibility might not be the same?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing with Jalen to watch is going to be how his handle progresses and how he progresses at, you know, attacking off the bounce. I think he's a little bit underrated in that regard. He has always kind of been able to handle, you know, from in high school he was always able to, you know, college he showed some flashes, and I think the Celtics really only needed him as sort of a 3-and-D guy as a rookie, and then he, you know, was a kind of a hyper-talented 3-and-D guy last year who, you know, mixed in a little bit here and there, and I think he's capable of more. So I think with Jalen, the most interesting thing is going to be how he handles additional ball handling responsibility, attacking off the wing, you know, sort of creating for himself a little bit, even if it's just kind of attacking closeouts in a little bit more of a advanced fashion. I think that'll be big because if he can do that, I mean, you know, he truly could be an all-star next year. You know, he's that talented. He's, you know, certainly that athletically gifted, and I think we've just seen his work ethic over the last couple of summers is pretty limitless, and then that really bodes well for his future. So I think just from a handle perspective, that could really vault him into the next level, you know, sort of the next tier of, you know, NBA players.
How about Tatum? The Kobe Bryant workout, Penny Hardaway just recently, dominating kids at his camps, all that fun stuff. But even his dad, I think, came out in an article recently and said, watch out for this kid in year 2. I mean, the expectations, we see it in the national rankings, and we'll get to some of that in a second, but the hype is so huge for the now 20-year-old Jason Tatum, not 19 anymore. The hype is so big. What do we expect year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, I mean, again, when you go back and watch some of the film and you just kind of see, especially as the playoffs went on and just kind of the additional responsibility, how he stepped into that role, it's pretty amazing. I think one of the things to watch with him, I suspect I would be stunned. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the starting lineup. I would be stunned if any of sort of the big 5 aren't in the starting lineup. Mm-hmm. But I think Tatum would be a really good, person to bring to the bench early. And then, bring him back in with the second unit to just kind of crush people off the bench. Because I think he's going to be, obviously, since he can create his own shot, since he can hit threes, since he can get to the rim, he can kind of create trips to the free throw line. I think all of that stuff is going to be very, very useful if he was in the second unit. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little bit of that, giving him a chance to cook with the second unit after starting him. One way or the other, I mean, the guy's pretty amazing. It's kind of funny to be like, well, where do you think he's going to improve? Because it's like, well, let's see. Last year he hit threes. He finished acrobatically around the rim. His handle is crazy tight for a 19-year-old who's 6'9". He's got amazing footwork. He already defended really well. I mean, do you want to see him pick up like an extra 1.6 rebounds a game or something? He's going to get better at everything. But, I don't know that there's one area that he needs to improve because, he's already so good at everything. So I think just kind of general improvements from him are what's going to vault him from super promising rookie into NBA star, and he's quite clearly on his way already.
One more break to tell you today's show also brought to you by Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. And in Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Aaron Baines, Brad Marchand. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds of thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark located at 113 Salem Street. Okay, let's get back to Tom. Celtics are loaded. We know that. There is, I saw Steve Bulpett write, I mean, there is, in terms of their reserve cast, never mind the starting lineup, and as you said, it shouldn't be any different than it was opening night last year in Cleveland. This team's as deep as going back to mid-'80s, really. It's pretty remarkable what Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge, for that matter, what these guys have to work with on this roster. But this will be the first time in a little while that we haven't had a rookie where there's all this hype. It was Marcus Smart, 6th overall pick, 3rd overall picks, and the two guys we just talked about in Brown and Tatum. But now it's Robert Williams. Comes in at 27. There's already kind of a laundry list of baggage and things that people are worried about, concerned about. Very well may not, probably won't even spend the entire year in Boston. He's probably ticketed for Maine in the G League for half the season. But at least initially, come the start of camp, you expect him and Al Horford to be attached at the hip, and going forward, what do you expect here?
Yeah, he's really interesting. I think obviously there was the initial problems with just kind of, being sort of an adult, which obviously that, he's 20, so that'll happen. I think, this summer I think has been really big for him. I think the Celtics have, dedicated a lot of kind of time and energy into not only kind of showing him like, hey, this is what you need to do on the court to make it in the NBA, but also like, these are the things that you need to do to be a responsible adult in the NBA. And, the last time we talked to him, he seemed to have taken a lot of that stuff to heart, which, the Celtics have to really like to see. So, I mean, obviously, you can't get a much better NBA mentor, especially as a big man, than Al Horford. I mean, literally the consummate professional who always is, willing to sacrifice for his team, who's always, just kind of doing the right thing, both on and off the court. And Brad Stevens has said that before, that you just can't ask for somebody better on a young team than somebody like Horford. But yeah, I mean, if they can really get Williams to buy in on Horford's process, on just the consistency, Aaron Baines talked about that a bunch this summer, and just how important that consistency is for both young and old players, just to improve yourself, but also to maintain yourself. I think that Horford will definitely be the player that the Celtics hope Williams looks up to the most. And then, you kind of go from there. I think, like you said, he'll probably spend some time in Maine. Hopefully he is able to learn from that, because the G League can be a tough situation for a young player.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of saying all the right things now. He hasn't been late for anything since that practice, so he seems like he's doing okay.
Hasn't lost his wallet at all. He still has that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't confirm that, but recent history would suggest he's at least misplaced it a couple of times.
Right.
But he's 2 minutes from the facility. He's living, real close to everything. He's doing all this stuff very intentionally to sort of, spur himself on, and I think that's a good sign.
So NBA player rankings have been coming out in recent weeks, and people are having fun just looking at those and judging those, and how can you not? But Sports Illustrated, ESPN, they both released their top 100 rankings. SI seems to be more about past performance, while ESPN kind of projects the future. That's the big difference, because we've seen some wild disparities. Even look at Al Horford, for instance, the guy we were just talking about. 16 for SI, best player on the Celtics, 34 in ESPN. Now, to me, somewhere in the middle, like mid-20s, mid to late 20s, probably a little bit more appropriate if I'm actually going through and bothering to rank a top 100, which I'm not. But it speaks to, I think, how people just continue to view Horford so differently.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, he was the best player on that playoff team. I think Tatum was obviously probably, you call him the best scorer. Jalen was obviously fantastic, but I mean, Horford, the way that he defended everybody from Giannis to Joel Embiid, just everything that he did was so crucial for them winning those first two series. So I think if you look at past performance, it's very reasonable to put him where they put him. And I think, you can definitely make the case that maybe KYRIE will be more impactful this year. Maybe Hayward will be more impactful this year. And, maybe looking forward, that might be the case. But, I mean, I don't think that there's anybody more crucial to a team than Al Horford right now. I mean, just, again, the Celtics are going to probably have to face the Sixers again in the playoffs. They're probably going to have to face, they might have to face Giannis. And whenever they do, they're going to have somebody who can, at very least, stay in those guys' way, contest them, make things difficult. And they're not always going to stop them, because they're, Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, these guys are really, really good. But having a guy that is as versatile as Al Horford and who also, passes so well. I mean, that's the other thing that's really underrated about him, is how he runs the offense for them, from the top of the key. Like, that's so crucial to have a big man who can do that. And, I mean, that's why I would have him, very high. I would have him a lot closer to 16 than I would in the, mid-30s. And he's just so unbelievably valuable for a team that hopes to win a championship this year. And I think that, really matters. We'll see. I mean, we'll see how he ages. I think that he is very responsible with his body, and I think that's going to come into play as the seasons go on here. But, I think that it's to suggest that he is the most important Celtic is not I don't know that that's going to be the case this year, but I don't think it's ridiculous at all.
Yeah, I guess it all depends on how you define things, right? The most important Celtic can be different from the most talented Celtic, or the best Celtic,
Certainly.
or the best all-around Celtic. I mean, I've had that conversation with Cedric Maxwell, with Grandy, with a bunch of people about just how best overall player on the Celtics, when you consider two-way play, to me, is Gordon Hayward. That's at least if fully healthy, and we'll see if he is. But people will clap back at that and look at KYRIE Irving, because the offense is just so superior to anyone else's offense that the lapses on defense are not so significant that you wouldn't still have him number one. So we could go in circles on that. That's what's fun about sports and debates and all of that. But some of the other things that you had in your article that people should check out, we won't dive into all of it. Some of it we've touched on, the other important areas and concerns going into camp, the scary Terry Rozier, not that he likes being called that, evidently, that how he's going to respond to coming off the bench. Marcus Morris is fit, and we can wait on issues like that, I think, because they're going to take time to play out and see what the health is of this team and what the rotations are and all of that, not unlike how it's going to take time to see what Kawhi Leonard's comfort in Toronto looks like, or the landscape of the East with LeBron gone, all of it. One thing I don't really want to dive into is the Jabari Bird situation. Evan Valenti, I thought, filling in for me last week, did a great job on that with Jared Weiss. But if Bird is cut, and I do believe that's the direction ultimately this is going to go, are the C's going to target Jamal Crawford? He's clearly interested. He's, maybe even at 38 years old, an 18-year vet, maybe a good fit. The numbers aren't as good in recent years shooting from three, and I don't know about his handle, if that's, what it once was. But is he the kind of guy that you would add to the end of this bench and see if you can help get him that ring, or is that just kind of maybe a pipe dream on Crawford's part?
It would be kind of a tough fit, at least from my impression, just because, I mean, the thing that Crawford brings the best is his ability to go get a bucket. And because he doesn't defend anymore, he never really did in the first place. Like you said, his three-point shooting has kind of fallen off. And obviously he can get super hot and just hit ridiculous shots. I mean, he's an incredibly talented player, going back to that debate about talent versus importance. But, I mean, he's incredibly talented. But I don't know how much he helps a team win in 2018. And I think that would be sort of the focus. I think the Celtics would probably be more likely to wait until, either wait until the buyout market or wait until something perfect comes along and just kind of keep an open roster spot if that were to happen. Just because, again, when you kind of go through the team, they're going to be able to stagger Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, all guys who can go get their own bucket, who can all, go score in some way, especially, shot clock's winding down, game clock's winding down. It's a big moment. They've got guys who can go do that. And in fact, in Kyrie, they have probably the best player in the NBA at doing that, depending on how you feel about Kyrie versus KD in isolation situations. So I don't know that Crawford necessarily fills a role on this team, especially given that he doesn't really defend anymore. So I would be a little bit surprised. I mean, obviously, the Celtics do like guys who are very talented, who can go get their own bucket. They love those type of guys. So maybe just having another one, maybe just, we saw it last year, Kadeem Allen had to start a game, for the Celtics because of all the injuries. And maybe just kind of having that extra guy just in case, midway through February, things go wrong for a couple of weeks. Maybe having that guy is super useful. I could see that as well. But personally, I would be a little bit surprised, and I would not be shocked if they just kind of waited, and looked at what was coming down the line and just kind of played the long game a little bit with that.
Knowing this team is so talented, is so deep, has so few holes, is there, and you can equate it if you want to, a guy who exists in the league that maybe is not currently available and could foreseeably, I guess, be around that buyout market, or even if he's not, just the type of player who's clearly not an all-star, someone who's attainable. Is there someone out there that you feel like this guy would be a perfect fit on this team because this is one area that they could stand to improve a little bit?
It's a really good question because, I mean, they obviously, with the wings and the guards and, they're so stocked, they're so tough at every position. I think you could make a case that, maybe they could use, another, a more productive big man than Greg Monroe. Obviously, they kind of went that direction last year with him and, he didn't really work out too well. But I mean,
although the hope is Robert Williams is that guy.
Right. I mean, that's what I was just going to say. The hope is that then, the guy that you re-signed this summer, Aaron Baines, and Robert Williams, obviously, that you drafted, are able to help out with that. So maybe the perfect fit is a young guy who they could, hope to develop, and obviously not a top flight lottery pick, but maybe a young guy that you liked in the draft and you didn't have a chance to pick.
Spark plug energy off the bench kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody that you could hope to develop down the line, somebody that you could, pay a cheap contract to maybe.
Yeah, you do almost wonder if it's, and it wouldn't be this guy, but if it's a Shane Larkin type, or is Brad Wanamaker going to come in and be that guy? They're in a situation where, and this won't happen because it doesn't happen, but where they're perfectly healthy all throughout. They have so many options. They're so versatile. They can do so many things. You're right. It's hard to figure out sort of what that need is, short of just saying, hey, we'd love more. As Danny always says, I feel like Danny's go-to, and it's not a criticism because it's just something you want in the league. I feel like his go-to is, well, we could use more scoring on the wing, some more three-point shooting. Well, yeah, you could, but where do you ultimately find that? So yeah, I don't think saying the buyout market and playing the long game is a cop-out. I don't. So you shouldn't beat yourself up over that because when guys are going to get hurt, and so what this roster looks like right now, everyone's 100% healthy, getting ready to start camp in a couple of days, versus what the team is going to look like when they're already however many months into a grueling year and it's early February. It's different. There's no denying that. So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Tom Westerholm, thank you for listening to me blabber on, providing all your own insights as well, because this is the time, finally, after a full summer of shows and debates and previews, now we can actually get to the interesting stuff, which is basketball. So I appreciate you hopping on and try and get a little free time wherever you can find it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're a week away. It's pretty crazy. Thanks for having me on.
Always enjoyed talking to Tom. Really great stuff from Tom Westerholm from Mass Live. With that, we're going to get out of here. But next week, when we're doing this show, a week from now, we're already going to be looking at the preseason and camp. And we'll have heard from everyone at media avails. And basketball's back, everybody. I don't need to tell you to get excited because I know you already are. Episode 281 featuring Tom Westerholm is brought to you by Calm Balm. Right now, my listeners, for a limited time, can get their Calm Balms at a huge discount by going to their website, buybombshelpmoms.com, and clicking on the Indiegogo page. Thanks also to Boston Barber. Thanks to everyone at CLNS. Most importantly, though, thanks to you. Without you, there's no show, and I have more free time on my hands, so maybe I shouldn't thank you all that much. But I do enjoy doing this. Get me on Twitter. Let's debate, as we always do, at Adam M. Kaufman. If you'd feel so kind, so generous, subscribe on iTunes at Celtics Beat. You can catch us on Stitcher and the CLNS YouTube page as well. But go to iTunes, subscribe to Celtics Beat, leave a 5-star rating. That would be great. A comment just to let us know how you're enjoying the show. That'd be terrific as well. All right, Gino, get us out of here. Let's get to preseason play already.